Hello, and welcome to Adam's channel. This is the variety channel associated with the Model Railroad Operations YouTube channel. If you're new to the channel, thank you for coming by. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. This is the channel that I post anything that doesn't really fit in with the general scheme of model railroad operations. So anything I want, really, be it train related, be it non-rail, be it video games such as the train simulator I'm playing on screen, or other games that aren't train simulator, or maybe even some story readings of various things around the internet, and so on and so forth. And I'll also do some commentary videos on this channel. So if you've been watching this channel within the past couple weeks, you will know that I posted my first commentary video where I talked about my experience with a certain YouTuber, Twitch streamer, whatever, and how his drama, kind of affected me, and how it's important to preserve history, using that particular drama as well as various other 20th century events to kind of put that forward. So that was a pretty heavy video. It was very personal, and it was a bit emotional for me. But I decided this week that we would do something a bit more lighthearted, a little bit more just generally fun in general, and something that in all relates more to the general premise of these two channels, which is trains in some way or another. So for this video, it's titled The Pros and Cons of Train Culture, because that's, well, what I'm going to be talking about, the pros and cons of train culture. And I'm just going to clarify here that when I say train culture, I mean, I say train culture as a blanket term to describe both model railroading, rail fanning, operating trains as a living, railroad museums, riding trains, whatever. This is just a blanket term, so I don't have to switch between the nomenclature. So this is the pros and cons, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the cons just to kind of get them out of the way. And for the first one I put on my little list here is corporate cheerleading. Now, what I mean by corporate cheerleading is people who, rep for either one railroad company over another, or, kind of worship is a strong word, but worship a fallen flag or something along those lines. The sort of people that are like, oh, my layout models the Southern Pacific if it existed in 2005. Oh, my layout models if the Union Pacific was broken up by the ICC to preserve competition, or whatever. In all, it's just kind of people that are resistant to change and don't accept change as it comes. Now, I know that my view there might seem a bit harsh, but I'll say that in my life I've developed very sort of jaded and cynical views when it comes to the corporate side of railroading, as opposed to maybe the actual operational side in terms of how the trains run and how they're dispatched and whatever. But when it comes to the corporate side of railroading, in the end, railroads are transportation companies, and they are run like transportation companies, and they move things from one place to another, be it people, be it goods, be it whatever. I always say that if teleportation ever gets perfected and we can move large quantities of material from one place to another by means of teleportation, railroads will jump right on that, and they won't even need trains anymore. But that's kind of besides the point. I digress. But just people who are just resistant to change and just can't accept change as it comes. Now, I understand we all have our preferences and whatnot, but I mean, for one, I modeled a steam railroad on my Stetson Point Raisin Bodega layout, but that was because I just appreciated the history. It's not like I was trying to bring back steam locomotives or anything like that, and that's kind of why we do model trains in the first place, because they allow us to run basically whatever we want. It could be as realistic as we want it to be. It could be as unrealistic as we want it to be. We don't have to abide by any sort of rules or regulations or standards or, albeit safety practices, and we could just have fun. So, of course, you can't really do that in real life, and I just don't really appreciate the people that just can't take change. Anyways, moving on. The next one is the infamous rivet counters. Now, these are the people that will basically, and this is more for the model railroading community than anything, but it's the people that'll basically come to your layout and tell you what you're doing wrong, as opposed to appreciating what your layout is. And there are, of course, several ways to deal with these individuals. One of which, as Roy Smith of the UP Evanston subdivision layout mentioned, have a sign on your door with like 3 rules on it, plus maybe a few more if you feel so inclined. The first rule is, this is my railroad, I do what I want. And the second rule is, if you have a problem, consult rule 1. So that usually, kind of thwarts the rivet counters a bit. And other ways of defense, as also mentioned by Roy Smith, are, if they ever point out something, you could be like, oh, well, that's interesting. Or another way, and they usually get pretty stumped by this one, is to be like, oh, maybe I can come over to your layout sometime and see how you do it. And because they usually don't have their own model railroads, yet they still try to tell people how to build theirs. But, I mean, any model railroader doesn't really enjoy rivet counters. So coming from a model railroader, that's more something a bit more personal to me than anything else. But anyways, moving on. So the next two are actually kind of relating back to corporate cheerleading. It's people who don't accept change and quote unquote good old days. So yeah, those are basically the same thing as corporate cheerleading. It's just like people who can't handle change or can't accept change or wish things were a different way and so on and so forth. I'll say that me personally, I try to at least understand where a railroad company looking at it from a corporate perspective might be coming from when they implement some sort of change that negatively affects, may or may not negatively affect the lives of the people who work for them and do the grunt work on the ground and so on and so forth. I won't get into any sort of specifics because I know that stuff is very topical amongst the railroading, sort of the train community. But I try to see both sides of a situation in life. That's just how I am. I try to see both sides, and so I try to look at it from both ends. I try to look at it from the end of those who are effective, or affected rather, and from the end of those who are running the show. So I just don't really like people who can't really understand that. I would encourage people to maybe try to see things from both sides and try to see what the rationale is, and whether they agree with it or not is up to them. It's just, how can how can we see this from both sides? Really, that's all it really boils down to. Is people who can't really see both sides of a coin. And the last one under dislikes is the expense. Now, this one is very key, especially in the modern period, where model trains, particularly for the most part, new model trains, just the price just creeps up more and more for the same quality or lack thereof or whatever, and it just gets more and more expensive and therefore less accessible, especially to younger people in the hobby. Now, I know that that's kind of it's been saying, oh, model railroading is a dying hobby. It's not. I mean, you got people like me who are in it. And you got people like me who are in it not just to run trains around a circuit. You got people like me who are in it not, who want to operate model trains in a realistic manner and have fun with model trains as well. I enjoy the process of working with my hands and building something that has meaning to it and something that's not just on, a computer screen or something like that. Make no mistake, I love, computer games, train simulators, whatever, but nothing for me beats, working on a model railroad, and in particular operating a model railroad realistically. And of course, unfortunately, people don't seem to realize that. It seems with this whole model railroading is dying sort of thing. But I will say that with the expense of new models, it is definitely harder for young people to get into the hobby with their usually lower incomes, be it from allowance from their parents or just barely scraping by in college or whatever. But for me at least, I try to get things as cheap as possible. I usually get secondhand from eBay. I'll usually get just some like old junker cars, and I'll replace the trucks and the couplers, and I'll only buy new when absolutely necessary. It's kind of like what railroads like the Western Pacific may have done back in their day. They usually would buy sort of smaller power and only buy new when absolutely necessary. And that's basically what I do with model trains. So that's all I have for the dislikes. Just got those out of the way. And now we're going to move on to the pros of train culture. And thankfully, there's a good amount more here than there are cons. So the first one is the camaraderie. Now, unfortunately, due to the current times, though thankfully with people like myself getting vaccinated and so on and so forth, hopefully, and I don't want to set my hopes too high here. We may have some sort of end of the tunnel, but I won't go too much into that. But either way, I know that my local model railroading community still managed to get together online and discuss what we've been up to and the projects we've been doing and videos we've taken and pictures we've taken and everything like that. So I really like the camaraderie that comes with model train, well, with model railroading or rail fanning or whatever. For every rivet counter, there's 10 really supportive people that will teach you some good things, some good ideas, some good techniques, and will just really be an absolute godsend for helping out the process of your model railroad. Or maybe they'll help you with your photography techniques, or maybe where to get the cheapest tickets, or so on and so forth. And the camaraderie is just great. Model railroad clubs, even though there's often a lot of drama and stuff that goes on with them, it's just fun to be a part of a community with a common interest, which actually kind of leads me into my next pro of railroad culture, which is unification. And what I come up with this is that the world today is so divided. However, there are bastions of unity where people of all walks of life, all creeds, all races, all sexes, all sexual orientations, so on and so forth, they can all come together over a common interest, and we can all get along and have a good time thanks to this common interest. And I think the best example of this would be trains, would be the common interest of trains, be it model trains or whatever. I know that in my time going to various operating sessions, watching various model railroad YouTubers and so on and so forth, we come from all different walks of life, liberal, conservative, what have you, and we all get along. There's no arguments. We all just talk about trains. Whatever arguments we have are about trains. They're not about anything that would be otherwise really divisive. So that's another reason why I like trains so much, or the community surrounding trains so much. It's this sort of unification that we will all bond over this certain interest. We'll set all our differences aside, and we can bond over trains. And the next point I have is the sharing of ideas. And this kind of ties into the point I made about camaraderie for the first point, because as I said, for every rivet counter, there's 10 people that will genuinely help you out and teach you good techniques of how to build your layout, how to operate your trains realistically, how to put together an operating scheme, and people that will that'll let you come over to their layout to run their trains if you want. And I know that during these times, I have been lucky enough to be in an area where people are a little bit more receptive to that, taking all necessary, health, safety precautions and what have you, to be able to run trains in a small person setting, usually just me and the layout owner, just running whatever trains, he's got on the layout. So I'm lucky enough to have that, and of course the sharing of ideas, and my local communities are very helpful, and they have great insight because they've been in the hobby for more years than I've been alive. So I got nothing but thanks to give them on that. And the last one, which again kind of ties into everything else, is supportiveness. Because again, in my communities, everybody is very supportive of each other and supports their ideas, and and we all get together and run trains, be it online or whatever, and we all just kind of help each other out, give each other pointers. We'll help out novice operators, and it's all basically one big happy family. So those are for me the pros and cons of train culture. Now, if you got any other, if you think I missed any points, go ahead and put those down in the comments. But I really like how I really like what this community has done for me in my life, and their supportiveness and everything, and so on and so forth. I'm sure it's got its downsides, but I mean everything's got its downsides. But I think for the most part, the good very much outweighs the bad, like massively. So that's basically the video. So thank you for watching. Again, sure subscribe. I'll post some more commentary videos where I'll talk about some more personal things every so often, and every so often I'll post something else. Maybe I'll read a story or something like that, and just kind of post it here. Of course, I'll do what I can on the Model Railroad Operations channel, and thank you for all the support on there. And well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.